Welcome back to Father and Son Fix. In this episode, we're going to cover the different scenarios for M272 and M273 engine failures. We're going to go step by step through the Mercedes bulletin and show you how to determine if your engine is affected. Now, this is tracking back a number of years. However, it's still important now if you're looking to buy a used Mercedes and want to be sure that it's not impacted by one of these issues or the issue has been addressed correctly. Now, the initial issues that they had with the M272 and M273 engines had to do with weak balance shafts and the cam solenoids. They made subsequent changes to improve the components, so the severity of the issue was less and less as the production of these engines continued until they had resolved it. Now, in the first place, the earlier engines, most of these you're going to find in Mercedes from '06 to '07. They're going to have the more serious issue, as we'll look at. It's called scenario 1. As you get into '08 and later '07, '08, then you're looking more at scenario 2, and finally for the trail end of some of this was around '09. They had most of it resolved by 10. However, this is going to tell you what to look out for, how to check whether or not your engine is impacted. The M272 engine is a V6, the M273 is a V8, and they are evolutions of the M113 and M112 engines. They're all aluminum, really great engines. And really what they've done is added a dual overhead cam where there used to be a single overhead cam, and they included the variable valve timing. And that's where they had a little bit of teething or a little bit of growing pains. And these are still very reliable engines, especially once you've addressed these issues and if you get one later in the production run where these issues had already been addressed and they were cranking them out totally solid right from the factory. Of course, a lot of this is most likely not covered under warranty by Mercedes anymore. So this is more of a DIY type of video, also informational for any owners with these engines, the M272 and M273. We're talking about the E350, the ML350. We're also talking about the E550, the ML550, the GL550. Any of these models with the M272 is going to have the 350, and any of them with the M273 are going to have that 550 number in the name. Later on, Mercedes and the displacement of the engine no longer really align with the numbers, but in these particular years, actually the E350 is a 3.5 liter and the 550 is a 5.5 liter, give or take a little bit. So let's dive right in, and we're going to start looking first at scenario 1. And the main way you're going to see this is you're going to get a check engine light that's going to be triggered. You could have rough running, no running issues if it gets really bad. However, in the first place, you're going to get this check engine light, and then what we're going to look at now is fault code scenario 1 here. And so generally what happens is you'll get the check engine light, you'll try and flash or reset, but the code's going to keep coming back. And now we're going to show you what the issue has to do with. As you can see here, it's this challenge with this balance shaft, what these issues look like. See how worn those teeth are there? We have more damaged and worn component here. And just for comparison, okay, so if you're looking at these teeth here, I mean, oh, that's okay. Not really when you compare it here to a new gear and how much the teeth are clearly indicated or separated from one another. They're really starting to get worn down here in the damaged and worn area. Now, the solution for this scenario 1, as we mentioned, this is the more severe one, this scenario 1. In this case, you're going to want to replace the balance shaft, the cam sprockets, and the cam solenoids. In some instances, they also recommend changing the oil pump as well for any of the debris that might be caught up in there. So this is the more severe scenario where you're going to be replacing more of the parts in the engine with the updated parts that don't have the same failure rate. Of course, you're going to change the oil in the filter, because where is all the metallic debris from these worn sprockets going to go? It's going to go into the engine oil, and so that's why you almost want to do 2 oil changes to get all that metal out of there to start fresh once you've replaced those parts. And this is here, they're saying the same thing: drive for about 15 miles and then replace the oil again. And now we're going to get into fault scenario 2, which is only the solenoids being the issue. At this point, they had fixed the weak balance shaft and they had fixed some of these issues. And now we're looking primarily at the camshaft solenoid that is leaking oil. And you might not even have any fault codes for this as well. So this is going to show you, okay, these are the serial numbers. And let's just take a step back here. How do you know if you're in fault code scenario 1? Okay, you're going to look at your engine. And if your engine is an M272, the 350, up to serial number, these are the serial numbers, or M273 up to this set of serial numbers, you're going to want to take measures to replace these parts proactively so that you don't wind up having this issue. It's really recommended to maintain the longest lifespan for these engines because they're really good engines other than these particular issues. Now, if you're wondering, how do I get my serial number? The way that you do that is you can go up to a VIN lookup site and run a Google search for Mercedes VIN lookup. There's a few different sites out there. VIN decoder is another way that it might be described. And you put in the VIN number for your vehicle, and then in that list, when it breaks down the VIN code, it's going to tell you the serial number of your engine, and then you can see whether it falls into one of these particular scenarios, as Mercedes calls it. Okay, let's take a look at one of these Mercedes VIN decoder sites, and you can search any of these terms. Here's one that we've used in the past, and you enter your VIN number up here. And here's another one that we've used before as well, and you would enter your VIN code right here. And we're going to show using an example here of a 2008. And we're going to click on Get Data Card. And here is where you see the serial number of the engine. And we can see right away that this is a 272 engine. And here's the serial number right here. All right, so let's remember these last digits here. Really 30745 Okay, so if we look first at scenario 1 here, we're looking at the 272 engine, and this is applicable for the 272 engine up to 30468,993. So thankfully, it is not a scenario 1 situation for this 2008 Mercedes E350. However, if we go on to the next page or the next scenario and we look at scenario 2, M272 up to 759, and ours is 749, these digits right here, which means that, yes, unfortunately, for that particular model, fault code scenario 2 is something to watch out for. And if we were to purchase that 2008 Mercedes, we would look to see whether or not the repair procedure had been done, and if the miles were low enough and we could get a good deal on it, then we would go ahead and purchase it and make the repairs ourselves, as scenario 2 isn't too challenging, and it's certainly something that most DIY people can handle. Okay, now let's get back into it. That shows you a little bit how to determine whether or not your vehicle matches or your engine matches these serial number codes. Let's get back into the different scenarios and what they mean. Okay, finally, fault code scenario 3, and this is not even a failure of the camshaft solenoid. It's more that it's just leaking oil. Some of this can be due to the O-ring, and it's being wicked up through the harness, through that solenoid. And so this fault code scenario 3, and as we're going here, this is, 2 is not nearly as bad as the balance shaft issues which affected the first run of engines. Scenario 2 isn't as bad, and scenario 3 is even less of a concern, although still something that you want to address. Also, you don't want oil leaking all over the place, and really you want to address it for the long-term health of the engine. Okay? So for this scenario 3, where you're really looking mostly at an oil leak coming from that solenoid, these are the serial numbers that you're going to be looking at up to this. And here is 273 up to this serial number. Okay, and that's going to help you determine whether or not your vehicle is impacted. So we hope this helps you, and leave a comment down in the description if you have one of these models, your experience with it. Did you experience engine failure? Did you get the check engine light? How did these different scenarios play out for you? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we hope you have a great day.